4:01. So we were supposed to start at 4 o'clock, 1 minute behind, but I think people will catch on, log in, and hopefully enjoy this wonderful trio of wines with us. Let's see, John raised his hand. Just some quick pointers, housekeeping. If you have a question or anything, just put it in the Q&A box and we'll be monitoring that throughout. So again, I think we can get started here. Looks like we have more participants logging on, which is great. Anyway, I just want to thank you all for attending. We have this very exciting trio of wines to walk through with you this evening or this afternoon. It's certainly great to have this opportunity more at a happy hour time, and feel free to open these wines, enjoy them with dinner tonight or even tomorrow. Just put them in the fridge, put a cork in them, they'll be delicious. And I just, before we go any further, want to thank the team at Mollie Stones for making this possible, and also wish everybody the best, safest, most wonderful holiday. And hopefully it will be full of delicious wines like these, enjoyed at a table with loved ones, and amazing food. So my name's Gillian Balance. I'm a master sommelier, and I am with Treasury Wine Estates doing education. I became the 18th female in the world to achieve the Master Sommelier diploma. That was in 2012, and quickly thereafter, I was approached by Treasury Wine Estates to represent their incredible portfolio of wines. And in my history of writing wine programs for many decades, I always had these brands represented on my wine lists and in my wine programs. Was a lifelong ambassador before I even knew it. So this is great for everything to come full circle. And so, here I am today getting to speak to you all about these amazing wines, and what an incredible little bundle. This is really a great, perfect for the Thanksgiving table, for any holiday parties or family gatherings that you may be hosting. This is just like a wonderful trio of wines to share with loved ones. Oh, sorry. So yeah, just really quickly, we are starting off with the Acacia Chardonnay, which hopefully you all have in your glass, have popped that cork. And I can't say enough great things about this winery, but mostly because it really brought about, along with Etude, a lot of awareness of what was happening in the Carneros region. So if you've been up here, which I'm sure many of you have, you know that the Napa Valley is subdivided into about 16 different appellations, with Carneros being the southernmost, closest to the San Pablo Bay, getting the most kind of maritime benefits. So Chardonnay, Pinot Noir, certainly historically sparkling wine is primarily what this region focuses on because of that cool climate. Chardonnay really thrives in a climate where it can have some really beautiful, bright acid. And the founders of Acacia were very quick to recognize that in the late 70s. At that point in time, there had been a lot of investment from champagne houses. So if you've driven up Highway 21, you'll see Domaine Carneros by Tattinger. You'll see vineyards that Mum owns, and Moet and Chandon. So there was a heavy focus on producing sparkling wine. And I think that both Acacia and Etude, what they set out to do roughly around the same point in time was to try to emulate the great wines of Burgundy, the Pinot Noirs and Chardonnays that were coming from Burgundy, and try to produce still wines that gave you a sense of place, that were cool climate, and kind of trying to emulate that style of Burgundy. And I think both of these properties did that very, very well. Now, for those of you who love to drink Chardonnay like I do, you know, Chardonnay on its own, it's a relatively neutral varietal. So personally, I think it benefits quite a bit from what a winemaker can input into the character of the final wine. So whether that is fermenting in barrels, as you see on that screenshot there, or a couple of other processes like aging the wine on the lees after the fermentation and stirring that back in to really give some richness to the wine. You can use all these different techniques to ultimately come to the style of Chardonnay that you want. And at Acacia, historically, they have not utilized a lot of new oak. So I think, you know, immediately on the nose, you do get a sensation of oak, but it's not overwhelming. You also get this slight hint of kind of what we call a buttery or creamy nose as well. But it's subtle and it's very well integrated. And I think that's one of the things that Acacia has done well from its inception. Lots and lots of amazing scores and just some really beautiful Chardonnays and Pinot Noirs. So if we look at our Carneros Chardonnay, and the winery itself takes its name from this big, beautiful acacia tree that was the focal point of the property. And the tree itself kind of blocked a lot of the vineyards from the really crazy winds and fog and maritime like breezes that would come off of the San Pablo Bay. And so it kind of stood as this focal point, this protector of the vineyards. And, you know, so for me, this wine definitely shows the expression of Carneros. When we grow Chardonnay in cooler areas like Carneros, we tend to get a lot more citrus characteristics, more Meyer lemon. And when you grow Chardonnay up in warmer climates, like where I am, I'm here in Napa today, I'm very close to the Oakville appellation. When you grow Chardonnay further up valley, you're cutting off that maritime influence. So you get a lot more riper fruit, maybe some sensations of tropical fruit like pineapple. But what I think we really want is this great regional expression in the Chardonnay. Lots of citrus fruit, like I said, a little bit of that slightly buttery character, some very well integrated nuances of oak. So that would come across in a little bit of toasty characteristic, a little hint of vanilla. And yeah, this is just such a wonderful wine with a really nice bright acid, but also some depth and nice mouthfeel as well. I hope you are all tasting this and enjoying this incredible wine. Talk about versatility, especially at the dinner table, because this can be kind of your aperitif wine with hors d'oeuvres. It will also pair beautifully with cheese like triple cream, brie, and things like that. You can also enjoy this with some lobster, maybe some lobster with drawn butter. So lots of great options when you're shopping at Mollie Stone's and you've had this wine. You can put all those things in your basket and enjoy the Acacia Chardonnay with all of your food selections. Yeah, just again, has that really nice kind of round cream mouthfeel, but still lifted in the acidity, and that's really what the Carneros region is known for. And they were very active back in the late 70s, planting our winery Lake Estate, which is where we source all the fruit from. So we're not blending from a lot of different areas in Sonoma and Napa. We are focused solely on the Carneros region. So really, really wonderful Chardonnay. I hope that you guys are enjoying it. Mark said, can you explain malolactic fermentation and why do you do it? Wow, that's a great question. And I love to talk about it just because we make a lot of Chardonnay within our company, within our portfolio. So it is a topic that comes up with great frequency. And as I mentioned, Chardonnay is a pretty neutral varietal. So a lot of character comes from winemaking choices, barrel fermentation, and the length that you do that for. But one other important aspect of producing Chardonnay is a process known as malolactic fermentation. So that is, I have harvested my fruit this year. I've pressed the juice off the skins. I have my initial fermentation, and that is where the yeasts that are found on the grape skins start to eat the sugars that have increased in the berry itself and turn that into alcohol. So after that initial fermentation, I can trigger a second one that's known as malolactic fermentation, which changes malic or very tart acid. Think about biting into a Granny Smith apple, like that really tart acid, turns it into lactic acid, which is creamier, milky acid. A byproduct of that is diacetyl, which is the same kind of aromatic chemical compound that you get out of butter. So a couple things happen during malolactic fermentation. You lower the acid, you transform it into something that's creamier, and then you also have this kind of buttery characteristic that is a byproduct of that too. So what we have found works best for the Acacia Chardonnay is a 75% balance. So we'll take 75% of the juice from, say, 2018 and put that through malolactic fermentation to its completeness. The other 25% we will not, and then we'll create a blend and hopefully kind of getting the best of both worlds. Because if you don't put the wine through malolactic fermentation, you're preserving that more kind of tart acid. And so we're looking for the perfect balance. And I think 20 years ago, 15 years ago, we saw a lot of Chardonnay out there that was just going for ultimate ripeness, lots and lots of oak, full malolactic fermentation. So you got this like really, intense expression of Chardonnay. I think we've kind of like eased up on that a little bit, at least I know we have in our Chardonnay portfolio. And I think that, does reflect people's palates and how they like to enjoy Chardonnay. But at the end of the day, Chardonnay is very versatile. It's very food friendly. It is the #1 consumed varietal in the world, the #1 planted white varietal in the world. And although we see Sauvignon Blanc and rosés and things creeping up in popularity, I don't think that they are going to shove Chardonnay to the side. I think it's here to stay for many reasons. It's just very, very pleasurable to drink. It's also pretty easy to grow and really reflective of the climate that you grow it in. So, for those of you that like a more crisp style, you're going to want to look to the Carneros Chardonnays, or maybe Santa Barbara County, or even, in more extreme cool climate cases, Chablis. So yeah, just a really wonderful wine. That was a great question about malolactic fermentation. And again, Chardonnay is kind of neutral. It's pretty full bodied. So it's really like what you do to call out that ultimate expression of Chardonnay that gives it its really great character. My mentor was Kevin Zraly, so my first job was at Windows on the World in the World Trade Center. And he always said to me, and well, thousands of other people that took his wine course, that after you taste a wine, and I do like to suck a little air in when I'm tasting the wine because it just helps to break up those chemical compounds that are giving me the sensation of flavor and aromas. But he said, if you can look at your watch 2 or 3 minutes later and you're still tasting the wine, or maybe it's evolved a little bit on the palate, like it's broadened, and the sensation of the flavors of tasting the wine is still there, then you're looking at something that is of very high quality. And that's what I think of when I taste this Chardonnay for sure. Because, you know, long after I taste it, I'm still getting the citrus elements. I get a little hint of golden delicious apple. I get the sensation of oak, but it's not too heavy. I definitely get a little bit of that yeasty character from the lees. So we stir those back in during the process to give us some richness and different texture. And it really does broaden on the palate, and such a wonderful wine, such a great representation of utilizing fruit from arguably one of the best places in California to grow Chardonnay fruit. Great, so we answered that question. Just trying to advance here, these slides. Great, we're gonna move on to our Etude Pinot Noir, which is, I don't know if everybody's got that in the class. Such an exceptional wine. Couple things about Pinot Noir. It's very, very difficult to grow. So that's why Pinot Noirs can creep onto the expensive side, in case you're wondering. It doesn't, when you plant a Pinot Noir vineyard, doesn't yield a lot of fruit. So you're gonna get less fruit and be able to make less wine from a vineyard of Pinot Noir that you would say Cabernet or Merlot. It's also very, very finicky about where it grows. It has really thin skins, so it's susceptible to all the vagaries of nature like rot and mildew. And so you have to be very careful about where you plant it, what soil types you plant it in, and also the climate. It doesn't really like a very warm climate. So you'll never see a lot of Napa Valley Pinot Noir, but you definitely see a lot of Carneros Pinot Noir. And that's why most of the greatest Pinot Noir vineyards in California push towards the coastline, because those Pinot vines will benefit from the proximity to the ocean. And in fact, that ocean will kind of create this inversion layer that blankets most of those vineyards in fog throughout most of the day. And it really helps to mitigate the warmer temperatures that California is known for, right? That's why we love living here. And the grapes like it a lot too, because it kind of extends the growing season and gives you a great amount of physiological ripeness. So we're not looking at these huge heat spikes or sun baking the fruit. Pinot Noir likes a very cool, long growing season to develop flavors. And again, very thin skin, so it would not do well in hotter climates. When we look at Etude Pinot Noir, it's taken from the French verb étudier, which means to study. And our founding father, Tony Soter, who we purchased the property from him in the early 2000s, but he set out on a mission to, just like Acacia, produce Chardonnay and Pinot Noir in a Burgundy style, a style that emulated the great wines of Burgundy. like I said, there was tons of sparkling wine being made here, but he really wanted to produce excellent expressions of still Pinot Noir and Chardonnay. If you've been to our winery, and I hope that you do come to our winery, and if you ever need to, if you need a contact to come and visit us, that's me. And we can certainly make that information available to you. But if you visit the winery, we're located very close to Napa. It's not where our estate vineyards are at all. Our estate vineyards are way far south and much, much closer to the ocean. So when Tony purchased the Remy Martin distillery property where our hospitality and winery are located today, after some research, he realized the soils surrounding the property were not really going to produce world-class Pinot Noir. And that's when he set out to find Grace Benoit Estate or Grace Benoit Ranch, which is listed on the label of this beautiful bottle of Pinot. And from there, planting about 500 acres. So a serious commitment in a very, what was then a very inhospitable part of Carneros, where you're kind of going, are we even going to be able to ripen Pinot Noir? Of course, today with elevated farming techniques and specific clones, we've learned to really cull the best out of this terroir here. And we're very, very proud of the quality of wine that it produces. So today our winemaker is John Priest. He joined in 2005, so he has 15 years of experience with our estate vineyards. And that speaks volumes in terms of how you want to grow the fruit and what you want to do with the wine. So and that's a little picture of our estate vineyards in Carneros at Grace Benoit. And literally on a clear day, you can see the San Pablo Bay from the top of the property. Also during the growing season, when you come up to Napa, it can be upwards of 90, 100 degrees. It's usually around high 70s down there and quite chilly. Like you need a vest, it's pretty windy. So, but all those great things that Pinot Noir loves to grow in. So again, in the early, late 70s, early 80s, like I said, Carneros was known mainly for sparkling wine because you need very high acidity in the grapes. You don't have to get that fruit really ripe. You are looking to produce a wine that is lower in alcohol, certainly in the case of sparkling wine. So, it was the pioneering efforts of both the Acacia and Etude that really helped to establish this region for, world-class Pinot and Chardonnay. And, the history has just been great from there on. Now, Carneros, the appellation itself, straddles two counties, so Napa and Sonoma. So if you're growing fruit on the Napa side, you can still label a wine Napa. And a lot of wineries in Napa Valley do prefer their Chardonnay fruit to come from these cooler areas. So you will see many labeling Napa Valley when the fruit is actually coming from Carneros. And I think that's been a little damaging to the reputation of Carneros because it hasn't really elevated the awareness of the greatness of this region. Albeit, if I owned a winery in Napa Valley and I was growing fruit to make Chardonnay and Carneros and I could label it Napa and it's the more recognizable AVA, I'd probably do the same thing. And so that's another just point of pride specifically with Etude because, we label Carneros. We are very proud of the area and what we produce here. So this is our Grace Benoit Pinot Noir. So again, that estate is way, way at the very edge of Carneros, really in the coolest part. So we have to be very careful about what we plant there. And I see a great question came up about clonal selection. And that is, well, we would probably need a few hours and some food or something to dive into that question. But Pinot Noir, as I mentioned, is very finicky. So picking the right clones of Pinot Noir, so maybe some that are more resistant to rot or mildew than others, some that are more hardy, some that give you more spice. All of these clones will add different things. So typically a Pinot Noir vineyard will be planted to multiple clones just because it gives Pinot Noir that real complexity that we're looking for. Many of them were brought over from the Burgundy region of France, from Dijon. So you might hear Dijon clone a lot. Some are cuttings from some of the most famous vineyards in Burgundy that are not to be disclosed, but sometimes they are called Pommard clones. So we have Pommard, Dijon, several hundred different types of clones. Pinot Noir mutates very easily. So based on how it responds in a vineyard, you can take those cuttings if you like that specific style of Pinot Noir, and then just take the cuttings to replant. And so, you know, you have, for the most part, vineyards that have several clones. You know, in Burgundy, it's called Sélection Massale, where it's just let the Pinot Noir mutate over time, and it just gives different cluster sizes, weights, and different flavor profiles in the resulting wine. We have about, I think, 9 or 10 different clones planted at the Grace Benoit estate. And we do really feel like that gives us a certain complexity, because really great Pinot Noir is not blended with anything else. Certainly in the case of Cabernet, which we're going to talk about in a minute, you've got 5 different varietals that can lend all these different layers to the wine. And in the case of great Pinot Noir, you just have Pinot. So clonal selection will really give you some different attributes that will make the wine more complex. Now, I've got my wine in what we refer to as a Burgundy stem, just because of the delicacy of Pinot Noir. You have a wider bowl, so you really get more air contact with the wine, and it really helps to draw out a lot of the more subtle aromatics. And in the case of Pinot Noir, it's really all about red fruit. So if you're putting your nose into the glass and starting to dive into this delicious wine, I think what you'll get is red cherry, maybe some pomegranate, maybe cranberry, certainly of the more tart nature, because we are in a cool climate situation, so our fruit doesn't get as ripe, right? Think about a Napa Valley Cabernet from an area like Rutherford, where I'm coming from today. You know, you get a lot of ripe, lush fruit. The cooler you go, the less ripe it is, and the more kind of tart red fruits you'll get, specifically from Pinot Noir. I love looking at the color too. So if you have the Cabernet poured and the Pinot Noir, you can see quite a difference in color, and the coloring matter comes from the skins. So as I said before, Pinot is very thin skinned, so it's not ever going to give you a very deep, opaque, rich color, but that doesn't mean that it doesn't over deliver on flavor and length and texture. This is really just such a wonderful wine. A fantastic wine for Thanksgiving, because it's very light red. It doesn't have a lot of tannins. It's not super high in alcohol. So it's really going to perform well with a lot of different flavors going on the table, with turkey, with cranberry, with stuffing. It's just such a great kind of bridge wine that really works well with everything. Please feel free to put any comments on these wines into the Q&A. I would love to hear what some of your reactions are to these wines. again, I think that they're just so, you know, they really speak to the place that they come from. So kudos to the Mollie Stone's team for really choosing a beautiful trio of wines for us to enjoy here today for our happy hour, virtual happy hour. The other thing that Pinot Noir, like I said, doesn't have is aggressive tannins, right? So not a very drying wine. You know, when you taste a big Cabernet and you have a lot of tannins and a lot of intense color, it tends to kind of strip the moisture from your mouth. And that's great if you're eating a big juicy ribeye, because you're coating your palate with a lot of fat and protein and washing it away with a pretty, you know, sturdy wine. In the case of Pinot Noir, you know, for me, I think more game birds, more, I don't know, there's a real distinctive kind of earthiness to Pinot. So you tend to think of maybe mushrooms, like a mushroom risotto with some duck confit, right? Or just think of even a beautiful grilled piece of fish, like tuna or something. You know, this wine is light enough to work with that too, and that's why we call it a bridge wine, something that will bridge the gap of all different types of food. So really fantastic. Okay, we have some more questions coming in. I love it. Food and cheese pairing. Yeah, I think I just went over that. But in terms of cheeses, for me, Pinot Noir really does nicely with a more earthy, kind of creamy cheese. Usually I think of blue veined and sharp, more aged cheeses going with kind of sturdier red wines. This is a little bit more delicate. So, you know, something like a, oh gosh, you know, Cowgirl Creamery, like Midnight Moon. I don't know. I'm kind of, that question threw me off, but cheese with Pinot Noir is very, very good. I would, again, go for maybe some of those more creamy, like earthy styles. And as I mentioned before, game birds, risotto with mushrooms, really, really fantastic. Just think about kind of matching those food characteristics, those flavors to the Pinot Noir. A question about farming. So we are all sustainably farmed at the Grace Benoit Estate. Great question. And we take it very seriously. So sustainability to us means a lot of things, but most importantly means that we are leaving the vineyards in better condition years to come. And so many things are involved with that, from the people that work on the property to how we utilize resources there, how we utilize water. We have these great troop of 500 sheep that come out after harvest and kind of graze and fertilize the soil for us. So it's all about, you know, creating this cycle of sustainability that we really do feel like matches a non-intervention winemaking approach with a non-intervention farming approach. So no chemicals, again, really trying to utilize our resources in the best way possible. And so sustainability is a big term, but to me, it involves everything from the people that work with you to what you're doing in the winery and how you're using the resources in the winery, and also to how you're farming. Okay, so I hope that you all enjoyed the Etude Pinot Noir. Really, really fantastic. And, you know, if you keep swirling the glass, like I just opened this bottle, but it's just going to get better and better. More and more layers of fruit and flavor are going to come out of this wine. And continue to surprise you and delight the senses. All right, so the last wine in the trio is the Beringer Knights Valley Cabernet. And, oops, sorry. So we're just going to talk a little bit about Beringer. And if you've been up to Napa Valley, hopefully you visited this property. It is one of the most visited properties in Napa Valley. It's certainly been here for a very long time, since 1876. So we're looking at over 145 years of production, continuously operating through Prohibition, which is another cool aspect. But if you come to the property, what you will see is the tremendous focal point, which is the Rhine House. You'll also be able to tour the old stone winery, which we don't produce wine there anymore. But when you walk through, it is like walking back into time, into a time where there wasn't electricity up here, and the winemaking was very rudimentary yet natural. So it's a three-story property that everything was made via gravity flow. So we bring the grapes up into the very top floor, push down to the second floor for fermentation, and then down to the third floor where you can see Jacob and Frederick there in the lower right-hand picture, where we would age the wine. So they were making wine in the most gentle way, only because they didn't have power and resources to speed up the process. So kudos to them. They brought these techniques over from Germany, which is where their family was from, where they were from. And again, one of 7 wineries to survive Prohibition. So they did that in a number of ways. Jacob and Frederick made wines for sacramental purposes. They kept the business small and only family owned and operated, and really were able to sustain the damages brought about by Prohibition by not being able to produce and sell wine. So, I mean, looking at the history of Beringer, you really do see that it kind of established winemaking in Napa, and it is, you know, one of the wineries that contributed the most to the production and the expansion of Napa Valley. Of course, we had to survive Prohibition and a couple world wars and economic depression, but Beringer did that and continues to innovate based on their sense of tradition. Just an incredible property to visit. I can't stress that enough. How amazing it is to come up here and still be able to get that real sense of history, but also wines that are just so loved by the consumer, so reliable and consistent. And we just, you know, we do that through our continuation of winemaking expertise, of working with the 1,200 acres that we have here in Napa. And that longevity and that pedigree is really what, you know, keeps Beringer at the forefront of the minds of consumers, which is great. The Knights Valley Cabernet is far and above one of my favorites in our portfolio. I hope that if you guys have cracked this bottle, you would agree with me. And one of the confusing things about Knights Valley is that it's not in Napa. So you have to go all the way up to Calistoga, cross over the Napa-Sonoma County line, and that's right where Knights Valley is. And this really was developed by Mark Beringer's father, Mark Beringer's our current winemaker. He's the 8th chief winemaker in the history of Beringer. So it was his dad and Roy Raymond who saw the need to expand outside of Napa Valley. They knew that it couldn't grow much beyond the limits, the geographical limits. And yet the demand for wine, specifically California wine, was increasing rapidly. So they sought out terroirs and climates that were very similar to Napa and settled on Knights Valley. And we have about 500 acres planted there since 1969, I want to say. I think 1972 was our very first vintage of this wine. So what an incredible amount of history and development in that area. They found that the climate was very similar in that it's just as dry, it's pretty warm, great volcanic and alluvial soils, which, you know, Cabernet Sauvignon and all the Bordeaux family of varietals really thrives in. So they were like, we'll take 500 acres and produced the Knights Valley Cabernet Sauvignon. And to me, this is a wine that you can open and consume right away, or you could cellar for 8 to 10 years. It has a real kind of generosity to the fruit, really just very easy to drink. And I think at a price point where if you are a huge Cabernet Sauvignon lover like I am, you know, you can enjoy this on a Monday or Tuesday night, or you can enjoy it at a special occasion as well. So really great price point and great approachability for a young Cabernet Sauvignon. This wine is typically around 80% Cabernet Sauvignon. So we talk a lot about Bordeaux blends, and to me, we really started to plant these 5 Bordeaux varietals back in the 60s and 70s when global recognition started to, Napa and Sonoma started to be globally recognized for being world-class wine producing regions. So we thought we should emulate the very best in the world, which were the red wines of Bordeaux. Hence those plantings coming over here and really giving us the foundation for producing these wonderful Cabernet Sauvignon based reds that Napa and Sonoma are both well known for. So we start with around 80% Cabernet Sauvignon. It's the darkest, it's the most tannic. It gives us kind of that base layer, that structure. And then we blend in about 10% Merlot, which ripens a little bit earlier. It's not quite as tannic, has a little bit different fruit profile, so it kind of softens the Cabernet Sauvignon a little bit. And then we add in little bits of Cabernet Franc, Malbec, Petit Verdot, the 3 other of the 5 Bordeaux varietals to give us little things like color, hints of spice, fruitiness, and also some really beautiful kind of top notes and aromatics. We age this wine for 16 to 18 months in roughly 40% new French oak. So we're not using a lot of new French oak, not using 100%. When you use brand new oak barrels, you really are imparting a lot of that oak flavor and also some more tannins. So tannins found on the skins of the grapes, also in the oak barrels. And we don't want a heavy impact of oak. We want a little bit. We want that little hint of vanilla and baking spice and all those things that make, that marry so well with the Cabernet and the Bordeaux family variety flavors. But we don't want it to be overwhelming. And we do also want it to be very approachable. So if you're using 100% brand new French oak barrels, it's going to take a long time for that wine to kind of soften up and come into its own. So this wine to me, and you know, if you're comparing the Pinot Noir with the Cabernet, you can really understand like what, you know, when you say red fruit and you put your nose in the Pinot glass and you get all the cherry, put your nose in the Cabernet glass and it turns to more of a blackberry, black currant, much darker fruit. Also, the color is a lot deeper and richer too. So that, again, then will change your food options, right? So where with the Pinot Noir, when I'm thinking of soft cheeses like a poisse, or I'm thinking of duck confit risotto or mushroom risotto. When I move into the Cabernet Sauvignon world, I'm starting to think more fat, more protein, maybe like a nice grilled ribeye. Something that those, when you grill meat, it kind of gives you that sensation of a toasty, oaky barrel. And so those flavors just kind of really meld beautifully together. But if you think about the tannins of a Cabernet Sauvignon versus the Pinot, you get a much more drying sensation in the mouth, but that's kind of what makes you want to coat your palate with protein and fat, so this tannins can just like wash it all away and leave you craving another bite. And again, whereas I think of more of those softer, earthy, creamier cheeses with the Pinot Noir, with Cabernet, I would definitely go more towards a blue veined cheese, or even an aged cheddar, or aged manchego, something that has those proteins that have crystallized and give you those little crunchy crystals, and lots of sharpness, because the sharpness will really bring out the fruit. It will make it shine. So two really great examples of reds, and also a really delicious Chardonnay. What a great trio of wines. I'm going to see if we have any more questions. Why do you use different wine glasses? That is a great question. Yeah, you can see here I have this more tapered bowl for my Cabernet Sauvignon, and I have a rounder, wider bowl for Pinot Noir, and this is called a Burgundy stem, because Pinot Noir is the main red grape in Burgundy wines. So if you're looking at old world regions like Burgundy in Europe, they're generally named for the place that they come from, whereas in the New World, in California, we varietally label. So this is known famously as a Burgundy stem, which is what you want to put Pinot Noir and Chardonnay in, because that wider circumference gives you more air contact with the wine and helps the more subtly aromatic varietals give you a little bit more of the aromas that you're looking for. And if you have both, I always say, like, pour some Cabernet into the Pinot glass, pour Pinot into the Cabernet glass. It's totally different. What you get with Cabernet, because it's higher in alcohol, when you put it into the wider bowl, you're actually getting more of the alcohol aromas and not more of the fruit. And this kind of tapers so that you really, all you get is the freshness of fruit. So there is a little bit of science to it. What's the optimum time to allow these wines to open up? Can you tell us how long each should breathe before we consume them? Sure. For me, 30 minutes to an hour. You could decant at either of these reds for an hour before you enjoy them. But I think, if you are having a first course with your white wine, if you pour the wine into glasses, it will be sufficiently aerated by the time you get to the red. So I would say about an hour. How much have the fires and the effects of the pandemic have affected grapes and wine production? Yeah, that is a great question. That requires a pretty long answer, but generally speaking, production's affected by the pandemic because we have to be very careful about who's in the winery and when. So you add on top of that the difficult layer of fire activity, where you're racing to get fruit in. And for us, fortunately, our vineyards really escaped damage. I can't say that about others. But I feel very very proud that I work for a company that has a lot of different vineyard sites, so we can be very selective. Whereas if we were one single estate property that was affected by the fires, we wouldn't be making wine. So we continue to, again, that process of selection. But that said, the fires were a detriment, but the community pulls together and gets through and thrives. So, does the blend of Knights Valley Cab change from year to year, or are each of the varietals the same? The blend changes, but it's a very subtle change. So, like I said, it's typically in the 80 percentile of Cabernet, usually somewhere between 7 to 10% Merlot. So you're already looking at 90% roughly. And then little percentages of Cabernet Franc, Petit Verdot, and Malbec blended in. We grow all of those varietals on the estate, ferment them separately. And then the winemaking team, led by Mark Beringer, gradually produces the blend for each year in and year out. But we try to remain consistent to the style of Knights Valley, which is approachability, a good amount of Cabernet Sauvignon, but also those little percentages of the other Bordeaux varietals, just to give us one really consistent, lovely wine. Let's see. I think I talked about sustainability. I'm pretty sure we answered most of the questions. I don't know, Sean, you could tell me if we did or we didn't. What's that?
There's a new one.
Oh, there's a new one? Oh my gosh. How much? Let's see. I don't see it. Well, I do see a comment. We're enjoying these excellent wines. Familiar with the Acacia Pinot, but not the Chardonnay. And this is our first experience with Etude. Thank you so much, Bridget. That is so incredible to hear. We love it. Yeah, all perfect for Thanksgiving. Absolutely. And as far as I am aware, there's about 3 more hours to take advantage of the special bundle pricing. So that's great. We also have another tasting coming up on December 9th from 4 to 5 that features Stag's Leap Winery, and you don't want to miss that. Those wines are spectacular. Winemaker Christophe Paubert will be joining in for that. So I also learned today that, you know, and this is, I guess, probably insiders only right now at this point, but Mollie Stones will be doing 20% off of all wine on Black Friday. I think I'm going to need to take advantage of that. That's incredible. 20% off all wines on Black Friday. Fantastic. Oh, somebody asked if we were doing tours again. Yes, we are. We are. We are restricted to outdoors, but fortunately we have 6 properties up here that are have amazing grounds to tour outside and with porches and covered patios, so you can come up here and do some great tastings and get a sense of normal wine tours up here in Napa. But yes, we are open. I think many of our sites are closed on Tuesdays and Wednesdays right now because we do some pretty deep cleaning, COVID cleaning. So, but open the rest of the time, and some wonderful options, especially if the weather is nice. I know that Beringer does outdoor picnic baskets with live music on the weekends. So there's plenty of options up here, and hopefully we can see you all soon and toast in person. I think that we answered all of the questions, and thank you all for the wonderful comments. I hope that you will take advantage of this bundle again, that it's been extended, and then again, hoping to see you on December 9th, where we feature Stag's Leap Winery. It's going to be incredible. But until then, I hope everyone has a very safe, happy, healthy Thanksgiving. For me, I got into the wine business because I loved sharing wine and food with loved ones. And I think probably everybody feels the same way that's a wine lover. There's no other beverage in the world that gives you that same kind of satisfaction when you're enjoying wine and in the company of loved ones. So I hope everybody has a really safe, wonderful Thanksgiving full of delicious wine and hopefully these wines and some great food that you've gotten from your local Mollie Stone's market. And really, really want to thank the team at Mollie Stone's for putting this together, letting us be the inaugural kickoff for hopefully what continues to be a nice little virtual wine tasting wine club. You know, it's a growing phenomenon. I find that people really love this happy hour time when they get home or they're done with work and opening a couple bottles and sitting and sharing. So thank you all so much for attending. And again, thank you to the Mollie Stone's team. I hope you enjoyed everything. Do you have anything else you want to add, Sean, before we sign off?
No, you did a wonderful job, and thank you.
Yeah, Sean's my partner in crime. So we are your go-to source, and
Right.
all the team at Mollie Stone's knows where to find us. So seek us out, come see our properties, enjoy the wines, and have a wonderful Thanksgiving.